Hey there, folks. Y'all ever wanted to go hills at high noon, kick open a saloon door, throw back a shot of the old fire water? Well, now, thanks to the addition of the Gunslinger class to D&D Beyond, we can. And on this week of Dragons and Dice, I'm breaking down all the things that a gunslinger can do. Let's check it out.
Welcome to Dragons and Dice. So, Mage Hand Press just released the new Gunslinger class, and it's added straight into D&D Beyond, so we can make all our characters right there online using that same thing that we do for every other class. And I'm just so excited about this to add these to my game. I'm a junkie for more classes and subclasses and all the interesting aspects that come around when you get new skills and abilities and the multi-classings that'll go along with that, which we'll get into that part later on. Probably next week I'll do a episode on multi-classing a gunslinger. But on this week, I want to get into what these cowboys and cowgirls can do because they're just going to be awesome for a Western or a steampunk themed campaign. And I think with just a little bit of work, you probably factor them into any era of technology bracket of your game. But before we get into all that, let's check out the flavor text they add in as the description of the class because I think it's really good.
Risk is in a gunslinger's blood. They are bound renegades, bucking tradition and forging a new path with dangerous and inelegant firearms. Gunslingers are infamous for surviving by their wits and relying on split-second timing and a considerable amount of luck to survive.
I think that's a pretty neat description. I like when they put stuff like that in the books. I always like the little flavor text they give you before you get started on a class. Speaking of the class, let's hop in and see what all the details are for what this class can do. And starting off, they're going to be a dex-based class, so you'll need a 13 dex to multi-class in or out of these. They're going to be a D8 on a hit die, and then they're also going to get dex and charisma saving throws. But then for the list of skills, and you get to pick two of these, and I have to say I really like this because it's a big list, and it seems like they took a lot of time to make this base class very compatible with all the subclasses, and this list kind of lets you diversify what you want to do with your gunslinger, but you get to pick between acrobatics, animal handling, athletics, deception, insight, intimidation, perception, persuasion, sleight of hand, and stealth. So, I mean, that's a good list to pick from, and it'll really let you, depending on which subclass you're wanting to go with, kind of get the flavor of your character the way you want it, which I'm always a big fan of. We get proficiency with simple weapons and with martial ranged weapons for weapon proficiency, and then we also get proficiency with light armor for armor proficiency. So you're going to be, dex-based, wearing light armor. You'll probably get to add your whole dex stat to that, unless you do something else that allows you to wear medium armor. And so the way I wanted to set this up was I was going to run through the base class 1 to 20, and then I'll do the subclasses individually after that. So off the rip at level 1, we're going to get 3 things. The first of these is a fighting style, and this comes with a unique caveat that if we choose a fighting style that requires you to hold a melee weapon, we can use that feat with a ranged weapon. And I just love that. It's going to make the flavor of this really nice. Plus, we don't have to come up with a whole bunch of new feats to make these guys fit right in with their game. So you can just add in any feat that requires holding the weapon. You can do with a ranged weapon now. And then we get the quick draw ability. And this gives us advantage on initiative. And we also get an ability called double draw. And we can draw or stow 2 weapons as long as they aren't two-handed when we would normally only be able to do 1. That's something that you can also get from like 2-weapon fighting is you can stow an extra weapon. It's nice for this because the flavor on a lot of these, if you're going with Western, is going to be like, I got 2 revolvers, or you're sitting there, you've got 6 revolvers strapped on. You want to, fan the hammer on each of those until you run out and then draw another one. I like the flavor of that, and that they give us the ability to draw 2 right off the rip. We also get 2 weapons masteries right here, and we'll get more of these as we level up. We'll get a 3rd one at level 4, and we'll get a 4th one at level 10, and that's where they cap out, is with 4 weapon masteries. Level 2, we get critical shot, and now we crit on a 19 or 20, and this also is going to get better as we level up, kind of like how a champion fighter does. and it's just built right into this main class. At level 9, we'll crit on an 18, and at level 17, we'll crit on a 17 through 20. So you get that nice expanded crit range, which is going to be important for the class because it has a lot of features that are based off of when you crit. At level 2, we also get our main class feature that most of our abilities work around or off of, and it's called Risk. And these are going to work very similar to Battle Master's maneuvers, and they're actually called maneuvers in the book mechanically here. And we get risk die to power these maneuvers. We start off with 4, and they're all D8s, but they grow as we do. And so at level 6, we get a 5th risk die that's a D8. At level 10, the risk dies go to D10s. At level 14, we get a 6th die. And at level 18, our risk die turn into D12s. So that's a pretty big roll up at the top. And when you see what all you get to add these to, rolling an extra D12 on that, I'm really excited for this class. Before we go any farther, let's hop in and check out what each of these maneuvers do. And then each subclass is going to get its own set of special maneuvers that are unique to it to kind of like differentiate it from the base class. Our first maneuver is called Bite the Bullet, and as a bonus action, you can spin the die and get temp HP equal to what you roll plus your Gunslinger's level. Pretty nice if you need it. You probably won't use this one that much. There are a lot of really interesting things you can do with it, but if you need a little bit of temp HP, it's good to have. The next one is Blind Fire, and as a bonus action, you can burn a risk die, and then you have blind sight in 30-foot range until the end of the current turn. It only lasts for one turn, but situationally, that is going to be awesome because when you can't see anything and there's like multiple invisible monsters, this is going to be super handy to just be able to bonus action, now I can see you. You can do a dodge roll. This one is also a bonus action, and you get to move 15 feet without taking opportunity attacks or being affected by difficult terrain. And the best part of this one is that when you do this maneuver, it auto reloads any weapon that you're holding, which could be important for this class. A lot of the firearms that they have in this book and in D&D have the loading property. So after you're out of shots, you have to take a bonus action to load those, and this will take care of that for you. There's a grazing shot, and if you miss, you can spin the die and add your dex to it, and then do that much damage to the creature that you missed. So this could be really handy if you know something's close to death and you're rolling a D8 or a D10 plus your dex. It's basically like you're getting a weapon attack without having to hit. So it's a good way if you know you need to kill something to have that. There's the maneuver called Maverick Spirit, and you can roll the dice and add it to a failed wisdom, intelligence, or charisma check and possibly turn it into a pass. And this one is free action, which is really nice because it will actually synergize with some other abilities later. And then the last one that you get from the base class is called Skin of Your Teeth. And when you get hit by a creature that you can see, you can use your reaction to roll the die and add it to your AC, hopefully making that attack miss. It doesn't last for the round. It just lasts for one attack. It's kind of like a rollable parry. And I like this a lot between the dodge roll and this ability. I think this class, even though it's in light armor and has D8 for HP, is still going to be able to have some good survivability. So that's all the maneuvers, and now back to our levels. At level 3, we're going to get our subclass, and one of the things I am loving about this book is that we get 6 subclasses right off the rip, and they're all going to have different types of play styles, and we'll go over each of these individually, but the 6 classes are the Deadeye, the High Roller, a Secret Agent, the Spell Slinger, a Trick Shot, and the White Hat. They're all going to be really fun. At level 4, we get ability score increases just like all classes. 4, 8, 12, and 16, we get those. And at level 5, we get 2 abilities, the first of which is Extra Attack, which is always welcomed on any martial class as it kind of gets your damage ratio up like it needs to be. And then we get the ability called Gut Shot, and I love this. When we score a critical hit with a ranged attack using a weapon, little caveats there. A lot of these have caveats that you have to be making an actual ranged weapon attack as opposed to like a thrown weapon or anything like that. I think that's a good thing, is it keeps you from being able to like grab these up and be like a thrown weapon fighter with a multi-class into this. So when you go through this material, you'll see that a lot of these require you to be using a ranged weapon attack. And I'm fine with that. I think it works out really well. But what happens when we crit is that this projectile lodges itself in the target's gut And now for 1 minute or until they use one of their attacks to dislodge the projectile, its speed is halved and it has disadvantage on an attack roll. It is important to note here that it takes one of an attack, not the whole action. So if they have multi-attack, they can use one of those to remove the projectile from their gut and then still make their second attack. But, I mean, we have an expanded crit range, and this just plays so well with the flavor of, shooting people, and gut shots are, like, notoriously debilitating. So I like the flavor they add in for this. Level 6 will be a subclass feature, and we'll go over those individually. At level 7, we get evasion like a rogue, and if we make dex checks and pass, we get 0 damage, and if we fail, we only take half. That's a great, even adds more tankiness to this and survivability to this class, and I'm a big fan. Level 8 is our next ASI, ability score increase. And at level 9, that's when our crit chance jumps up, so now we crit on 18 through 20. Level 10 is our next subclass feature. And then at level 11, we get our next main class feature, and it's called Overkill. And so I need to make a little sidebar here, because the weapons that have the firearm property don't allow you to add your ability mod to them. This is new to me. I've been adding my decks to firearm weapon builds that I've made for like Boba Fett and like fancy build outs, and I probably need to redo a few of those and dial the damage back, because you don't add your dex or any ability score to a firearm weapon. And that's good to know, and I thought I'd point that out to everyone else because that's something I've missed. But with this ability, what Overkill allows us to do is now we can add our ability mods to the rolls that we are doing with weapons that have the firearm thing. And if we're playing this in a campaign where there aren't firearms and we're using bows, and we are already adding our dex or whatever governing attribute that we're making our attack with to the weapon attack, we get to add an extra D8 on. So this works really nicely for fixing the firearms. It adds in your dex mod to that. And if you're just using bows or hand crossbows, because you can make a really cool like gunslinger using hand crossbows and making a bunch of hand crossbow attacks, you get to add an extra D8 in for each attack. At level 12, that's our next ability score increase. And at level 13, we get an ability called Cheat Death, and when we would go to 0 HP, we can drop to 1 instead, and then we regain HP equal to our gunslinger level. You can only do this once per short or long rest. Then at level 14, we get our subclass capstones. Level 15, we get a feature called Dire Gambit, and now when we roll initiative or score a critical hit, we get 1 expended risk die back. They don't stack. If you're already full, you don't get anything from it, but it's nice. You're always going to get to start each fight with at least 1. And with our big crit rate, you'll probably get some back during the fight. Level 16 is our last ability score increase. Level 17 is when our crit rate goes to 17 through 20, and that's where that maxes out. And then level 18 is called Deft Maneuver, and this is one of those abilities that you would miss out on if you multi-classed. And man, it's really nice, and it makes me want to like stay the course if I ever get to play one of these. But what we get from this is an extra bonus action that can be used only for maneuvers. And this is just so good. It just frees up bonus action economy. Every maneuver we want to do now takes this special bonus action. And I just love it, which means you could possibly do a couple maneuvers a turn because you use a maneuver bonus action for this and then your normal standard bonus action for a different one. It's just really nice, and the versatility it's going to give you is going to be really good. Level 19, we get epic boons like everyone in the game. And then at level 20, we get power word kill. Wait, no, it's called headshot, but it basically lets us do power word kill if we crit. When we crit, we can choose for it to be a headshot, and if the creature has less than 100 HP, it just dies. No save, just DD dead. And if it has more than 100 HP, we do 10d10 in damage. We can do this once per short rest, but if we were to crit again and wanted to reactivate it, we can spend 3 risk die free action and activate it again. So, I mean, at this level, we have 2 attacks and 6 risk die. We could possibly do it twice on the same turn if we got really lucky and, we got 17 crits and up. So really neat little capstone ability. I really like it. It's kind of like like I said, power word kill. It's just an instant kill if it's got less than 100 on a crit. Big fan of it. So that's it for the base class. There's a lot of fun stuff in here. I haven't done any hard number crunching yet on how hard these guys are going to be hitting. But just by looking at them, they're going to be a blasty blast to play. Your combat is never going to be boring with all the maneuvers that you have and all the goodies that you get to add in. And it's going to get even better when we get into these subclasses. Let's check those out next. First subclass we're going over is going to be the Deadeye, and these are going to be the snipers of the Gunslinger subclasses. And at level 3, we get a few goodies. First up, we get an extra maneuver called Eagle Eye. And once per turn, when we miss with a ranged attack, we can roll our wrist die, add it to the attack, and if it gives us enough to hit, we can. It's kind of like a bardic inspiration that we get to use our wrist die for. And then we also get an ability called the Sharpshooter Stance. And this is, we are so used to sniping from laying prone that now we can fire from prone without having disadvantage. And we're so used to doing this that getting up from prone only cost us 5 foot of our movement, not half. Because a lot of this subclass's features are going to be based off of you're laying down, drawing up a good shot, and making a sniper shot. So that last ability leads into our level 6 feature, which is called Concealed Position. And we get camouflage and can take the hide action even if we aren't well hidden, as long as we have the prone condition. And that gives us the invisible condition when we do this. But this invisible condition, it has a little bit of a caveat built into it that it ends if we aren't prone. So it's basically like we're in our ghillie suit, we lay down, nobody can see us, and as long as we don't stand up or do something that draws attention to us, we are invisible. And then we also get an ability at level 6 called the Sniper's Nest, that if we miss with an attack while hidden, it doesn't give away our position. So you can go prone, you basically are invisible, you're hidden, and even if you miss, they don't get a drop on you unless they just, something else happens or they have true sight or some other ability to see you. At level 10, we get the feature called Reposition, and now when a creature misses us, we can use a reaction to end the prone condition and move up to half our speed. So it's basically like they got a drop on us and then we moved away. And I like that. And our level 14 capstone for this is that when we take the attack option, we can forego our second attack and make the first attack so focused that we get to make it with advantage, and that if we hit, we auto crit. And this seems like it will be really nice. I'll have to crunch some numbers to see like how much more damage we actually do on a crit here than just 2 attacks. But with our level 20 capstone feature that activates on any crit, it's a guaranteed way you're getting to attack with advantage. You're going to have a big high to hit ratio by the time you're level 20. You can add a wrist die onto the attack if you miss. And then if you do hit, you get to add in that headshot ability. So the synergy with this and your level 20 capstone is going to be really nice. And I really like the flavor of this because it's like you're a sniper and it's kind of like playing in that I don't need 2 shots. I just need 1. And I think it's really good. I like the prone ability and all the stuff that goes along with that. And it's also very high risk, high reward because were you to be found and got surrounded while you're prone and a bunch of melee monsters got to hit you with advantage, it could be really dangerous. But if they don't find you, you're the most dangerous person on the field. And I really enjoy the subclass. The next subclass is going to be the High Roller, and we get 2 level 3 features with this subclass. The first is that we have a great poker face, and now we get proficiency with all the gaming sets, which is pretty nice. We're going to own the saloons and the gambling halls and be able to, turn over some easy coin, grifting some people. And we also get our choice of skill proficiencies between Deception, Insight, and Perception if we don't have them already. And then we also get a special maneuver here, And this is one of the more unique abilities I've seen in D&D, and it seems like so much fun. It's called Liar's Dice. And so the way this ability works is after we hit with a ranged attack, we can spend a risk die with our bonus action, roll it hidden, and then we can declare any total damage we want to the DM, and the DM gets to call your bluff or to go with it. And I think this is a really interesting mechanic in that it works out of game between the player and the DM as opposed to being with the player character and the monster. But the mechanic is that if the DM calls your bluff and you lied, you deal half the damage of what you rolled. But if he calls your bluff and you told the truth, you do double damage of what you rolled. And then if the DM refuses to call your bluff, you use the declared damage even if it wasn't what you rolled. So if you rolled a 5 and you said, I did 8 on my risk die here, the DM could either call, you would fail, you would do half a 5 for 2, or the DM could not call and you would do the full number that you proclaimed at the start. It seems like it's going to be really fun, and there is going to be a lot of good shenanigans going on with you trying to pull one over on the DM and the DM deciding whether or not to call. When you get caught, it's going to be hilarious, and when you get one over on them and you called out 8 damage and you flip over and show them a 1, it's just going to be fun. It may be a little slow in game for combat. That's the only fear I have with this, since it's like we have to work this out now before the attack. But all that being said, if it doesn't slow down your game, who doesn't love playing a little gambling with your DM? And at level 6, the next ability we get is called Risky Business. And if we are making an attack that doesn't have disadvantage, we can make the attack with disadvantage and get an expended risk die back. And one thing about this ability, the attack has to be made with disadvantage. So you can't have advantage from another source and say, I'm going to take disadvantage on this attack and just even it out to a flat attack. The attack has to be made with disadvantage to get the risk die back. At level 10, we get an ability called Risk Taker, and we can use our Maverick Spirit or Skin of our Teeth maneuvers without using a risk die, but the roll is a D6 instead of whatever your current risk die is. And I think this is going to be like the creme de la creme for this subclass. Getting to add a D6 onto a failed save or armor class without having to burn or expendable resources is going to be really strong. It's like a really powerful bless or a parry ability. I'm a big fan. I like it a lot. And then our capstone at level 14 for this ability is called Double or Nothing, and it plays right in with our Gambler Spirit that this High Roller subclass has, because now when we crit, we can gamble on a d20 roll, 10 or higher, and we roll all the attack damage 4 times instead of 2, and then add them together instead of like 2 times like a normal crit would be. And if you roll a 9 or below, it turns into a normal attack. So I have a couple thoughts here. I'm not sure how this is intended to be used with our headshot ability if we go all the way up to level 20. I mean, if the creature had less than 100 hit points, the headshot ability would just kill it. But if it had more and we decided to gamble, would we get to roll 20 d10s? I'm not sure if it's meant to be used with that ability or if you have to pick one or the other. Hopefully we can get some clarification for that in the future. Because honestly, I mean, if you just are rolling 10 d10s, there's a chance rolling 4 times the die that are on the attack would be more than that, and it would be in your best interest to use your gambling ability as opposed to your headshot ability. That's something we just have to figure out as we go, and I can see some really fun, like crazy Nova damage builds being built around this, like taking 14 levels of this, and then like 6 levels of Rogue where you crit, and then you get to roll your sneak attack dice 4 times. It'd be 12d6 added on to the however many, 4 times dice you got here. You could have some really insane big hits with this ability, depending that you were good enough to roll that 10 or higher and it didn't just turn into a normal hit. You'd feel real sad panda when that happens though. But it's a really fun mechanic. I like it a lot. I mean, and let's face it, if I ever get to play one of these, I'm gambling every crit I get, because who doesn't want to just drop all those dice at one time? For the next one, we're going to be channeling that 007 flavor. We're going to be using that Walther PPK and a silencer because it's time for the secret agent subclass. And at level 3, we get operative training, and we've learned the concealed shot, and we can pick wisdom, intelligence, or charisma as the spell casting because this is a new cantrip that comes with this book. And what it does is that for 1 minute, you shoot invisible bullets, the weapon's silent, any smoke or light that would be discharged from the weapon when you fire is suppressed also. And if you are hidden and over 80 feet away, the attack doesn't reveal your location. One thing here, this is an action to cast, but it only lasts for 1 minute. I feel like it would be better if this was a bonus action cantrip or if it lasted like 10 minutes so you could get it up before combat started, because this is basically, if we want to be silent and stealthy in combat, going to take our first round to do that. I don't know if that's worth the being able to fire concealed bullets. I'm sure situationally and for some roleplay mechanics, this is going to be spot on and amazing. In normal combat, maybe not that effective. But we also get an ability here where we get Disguise Kit and Thieves Tools proficiency in both of those. And we get 2 more skill proficiencies with this secret agent training. And you get your choice from Deception, Investigation, Persuasion, Sleight of Hand, or Stealth. And I mean, who doesn't love being a skill monkey? These guys are going to be like super sneaky, easily to change outfits and disguise ourselves. It's going to be a lot of fun to play a spy. And then our special maneuver for this subclass is really good, but also kind of has bad action economy. So we get the parting shot maneuver, and it by itself, if you're playing straight through this class, I am going to absolutely love this, because when we take the dash, disengage, or dodge action on our turn, we can spend a risk die and make a ranged attack using our bonus action, and we get to add that die into the attack damage. For multi-classing, I'm not as crazy about that. If I was going to multi-class, I want to multi-class with Rogue. I feel like the synergy and the flavor feel of the spy, having all the expertise and being like really playing into that skill monkey and like ranged assassin type character, it taking our action and our bonus action really steps on the toes of the Rogue's cunning action abilities, which is fine. I understand we can't have like multiple dashes and multiple attacks. That would be way too much movement and way too many attacks, especially getting to add the risk die in on top of that. But I think you could have made it to where the risk die just simply had the once per turn so that you couldn't double up on this if you had that ability to cunning action dash also. And it would have fixed all the problems and would have made the multi-classing a little smoother. For just the base class, and if you're playing a gunslinger, special agent, secret agent, I think this ability is amazing. Like getting to do those 3 dash, disengage, or dodge and still make an attack. You're not even losing out on that much damage because you get to add the risk die to it. That the ability is awesome. I think it's a little bit less awesome because of the poor action economy once you multi-class out of this, especially if you were to multi-class into a rogue or a monk or something that had an ability to dash as a bonus action. Other than that, it's still a great ability. I'm just kind of spoilt and really like the spy type characters and James Bondy feels and want them to be able to do all the awesome things that they do. So that's probably me just being a little greedy, but that's my thoughts on this ability. Okay, that ends my DM rant, and moving on to level 6, we get the ability called Fieldcraft, and we can use our Disguise Kit as a bonus action. We're like one of those speed outfit changers on America Got Talent now, because mid-combat we can change clothes and still take our attacks. We're also a slick talker, and if we make a deception or a persuasion check, any roll of 9 below now counts as a 10. This is going to be really good for being the face of the party. And as a spy, we should generally be really good at interacting with people. Level 10, we get the feature called Exit Strategy. And when we take damage, we can use our reaction to give ourselves the invisible condition until our next turn starts. And we can also move 10 feet. And our level 14 feature is 007 time because we got a license to kill. And now when we deal damage with a ranged weapon, we can roll 1 or 2 risk die and add them to the attack. I mean, that alone is a pretty nice little damage boost. Our wrist die are D10 right now, and they're going to go up to D12s, and that's a nice little add-on. But if we were to roll max on any of those wrist die, we get to roll it again, and if we roll max on that re-roll, we can do that again, and we can do that up to proficiency bonus times. So, I mean, it's a 10% chance on a D10 to hit that max, but it's a really fun mechanic, and when it happens, it's going to be absolutely epic as you just keep dropping those dice. So that's the Secret Agent. It's kind of funny. It's one of the flavors I like the absolute most out of all these, but it's also the one that I think I have the most problems with the action economy on of the group. And maybe I'm wrong, and once we play one of these and we start trying them out in game, it's going to just be awesome. And I intend to build like a one shot and run a whole group of these guys and try out each of the subclasses with my home table. And once I do that, I'll get back and let each of you know what I think about the subclasses and how they do in game. But I think part of the problem I have with this one is that I like the flavor so much that I want it to be just a touch better, even though it's still a really good subclass. Our next subclass is going to be the Spell Slinger, and I mean hello Arcane Shootster, because that's what this class is going to play like a lot. It's got a lot in common with Arcane Trickster Rogue. And so at level 3, we get spell casting, and we're going to be a quartercaster like Arcane Tricksters and Eldritch Knights. And we get to pick our spells from the wizard list, and it doesn't have any restrictions on which school of spells that we pick from, which is nice. I like that change with the new material. And when we take this, we get 2 cantrips and 3 first level spells. We can replace 1 spell when we level up, so that's something to keep in mind. And intelligence will be our casting. And nicely, we get to use a ranged weapon as an arcane focus, which I just like the flavor of, is that this gun is my spellcasting focus, and that firebolt is just a different type of bullet I'm shooting out of it. The flavor on this is going to be so fun. And then at level 3, we get a special cantrip called Finger Guns. And we point our finger at someone, and now our hand counts as a simple weapon. It's a bonus action to activate our finger guns. It lasts 1 minute, and it turns out that that index finger or finger gun has the slow weapon mastery on it, which is good to know. Next time you're chasing someone, you can just finger gun them in the back. You're guaranteed to run them down now. And we use our intelligence when we cast this cantrip for attacks instead of our dex. If we want to, it's either or. It's not a forced. And it does 2d6 force damage, but like firearms, it doesn't add the ability mod. I would be interested to know once you hit level 11 with the overkill ability if that got added onto this ability also, because it would kind of really detract from your ability of this cantrip if you didn't get to add the ability mod, being you would have a revolver. It also does 2d6. And you would get to add your dex mod to it. So something to keep in mind and see how that works out. I couldn't find anywhere whether or not after level 11 you got to add your ability mod. Rules as written, it does not appear so. And interestingly, also, it doesn't get stronger damage-wise like most cantrips do. It gets more range. So this cantrip starts out with a normal attack range of 60 feet and a high end with disadvantage of 240. And then it goes up by 30 feet and 120 feet. So at level 5, you have 90 and 360. 11, it goes up by the same 30 and 120. And then at 17, you have 150 feet and 600 feet, which is the same range as the longbow. Here's the thing. Once we have our finger guns out, when we hit with it, we can use a bonus action, roll a wrist die, and add that to the damage. So it's a nice little damage boost once we get it out. It's a bonus action to cast. It's an interesting little spell. I would like a little bit of clarification on whether or not after we get our overkill ability, if we can add our ability mod to it. At level 6, we get Spell Shot, and when we take the attack action on our turn, we can replace one of the attacks with a wizard cantrip that costs an action to cast. And it's always great to be able to cast as part of an attack. I wish it was just a cantrip instead of a wizard cantrip, because that means that we're never going to get to do that awesome, I fired a bullet, but I'm also part warlock, and then I let 3 Eldritch Blast go from the end of this gun. You know, hey, that's, like I said, apparently I've gotten real greedy in what I want out of my multi-class abilities. Take that with a grain of salt. But you can now cast a wizard cantrip, and those wizard cantrips are going to scale up, so it's going to be really nice. You can throw a firebolt out with 1 shot, and after you're level 11, you'll be throwing out 3d10s with that, and then doing your normal attack for your 2d6 or 2d8, depending on what weapon you're using. It's going to give you some really good versatility and a nice little damage boost with that. And at level 10, we get one of the neatest abilities I've ever seen on a class. It's called Counter Mage. And man, this ability, it makes me scared as a DM. It is so loaded. The first part of this is called Abjuration Breaker. And when we make a ranged attack roll, so it happens when we make the attack roll before we find out if we hit or not, we disrupt protective magic for the duration of this attack. So it only lasts for while this bullet's in the air. But the effects of the spells targeting this creature, such as mage armor and the powers of their magical items, are all suppressed and don't work. And they can't use reactions to cast a spell. So they can't shield or counterspell or anything like that. And so let's unpack this a bit, and then we'll get to the other 2 features that we get with this ability. So this is going to be a little bit of a nightmare for a DM to keep up with if you have a monster that has a lot of magical items on, because you would have to know exactly what happens to that stat block if you turn all those off. That's nothing for a DM to keep up with, because a lot of times you'll just fight mob monsters. They don't have any magical items. That's no big deal. It basically is just taking off the spells effects that they have on them and stopping them from being able to cast shield. But if you have like a big monster that's like part of like a mini boss or something like that, the DMs are going to have to start, if you're running a table for these, keeping up with what that stat block would look like once you turned off all of these magical items. So that's just something to keep in mind from a DM standpoint. And then the other thing is that this suppresses all magical effects that are on that creature. So this is also going to cancel out control spells on the creature for that turn. So if someone had hold person on a creature and you shoot it, that spell that is targeting that creature for the duration of your attack is suppressed. So you're not going to get an auto crit on a held person, because when you fire at it, the whole person's turned off. So that's something to keep in mind, and it's going to be a little bit to keep up with, like that this suppresses the magical effects on that whole person. It's really cool ability. I absolutely think it's amazing. It's just a lot to keep up with in game, and I'm sure after we get used to running them, it's not going to be a problem, but it will cause the DM staff to do just a little bit more work. But I mean, it's not that much. Just something to, keep in mind if you're going to run a table for one of these. The other abilities this comes with is that it has an anti-magic shot. And if you crit a creature and it's affected by your gut shot ability now, until it removes that projectile, it can't cast spells or take the magic action. And it has disadvantage on con saves to keep concentration up. I mean, if you crit a mage, its life is basically over. It can't do anything. Its next action will be to pull a bullet out of its gut. You've basically cost it a whole turn, and it's almost guaranteed to have lost concentration on any spells going. Just nutso. And we're still not done, because it gets one more feature with this. You also get inured to magic ability with this, and if you fail a saving throw against a spell or magical effect, you can use your reaction to roll a d6 and add it to the roll. The other thing here, this is a reaction, but it doesn't require you to use a risk die. If the failed save was on an intelligence, wisdom, or charisma save, you could roll your d6 from this ability, and you could still use your maverick spirit, because it's free action, spend a risk die, and add it to the save also. I mean, this is an absolutely loaded level 10 feature. You get like a super bonus to intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saves. you get that crazy ability that they can't shield, they can't have mage armor, you shut off all their magic items, and if you were to crit, which we also have a really good crit rate by this point, they also are just silenced and have to take an action to pull a bullet out of their thing, and they're most likely guaranteed to lose their concentration. It is a nutso ability. At level 14, we get our capstone for this subclass, and it's called Magic Bullet. So now when we make a spell attack roll, we can spend a risk die, and as a bonus action, substitute that spell attack with a ranged weapon attack for the weapon we're using. So the mechanics on this are that we're using our bonus action and we're trading away our spell attack for a ranged weapon attack, but then the damage is going to be all three of those combined. So if we were to say want to cast a firebolt, we would use our bonus action, we would make a risk die roll, we would roll to hit with our gun, and then we would add up the firebolt damage, our weapons damage, and that risk die's damage. So you're going to really be able to pile on some extra with this, because we can also do this as part of our attack action. We can just trade out one of our attacks for a cantrip and then roll that risk die. Boom, we've done an attack, we've done a cantrip, we've done attack damage, and a risk die damage. It's going to let you really pile on some damage. Plus, if you want, you don't have to use a cantrip. You can take the magic action. As long as it's got a spell attack roll, you can trade it out. So you could cast Chromatic Orb, upcast it to level 3, throw out 5d8s, make your ranged weapon attack, add that onto it, and then add on the risk die that you added with it. I really like this ability. You're going to get to throw out so many die, and it's something that you can do as part of your normal attack. And as long as you've got a risk die, you can activate this. There's no cooldown on it. I think it makes this subclass really awesome. I think this is probably my second favorite out of all the subclasses. I just love the flavor of your gun as your arcane focus, and those firebolts and whatever you're shooting out is all just like, I would flavor it as like it's a special bullet that I slot in, and then boom, that one's a firebolt, and the next one's just a regular old bullet. It's got a lot of potential to be really, really fun to play. Now it's time for the trick shot, and I'm your Hucklebear. And this one, it just has the most like Doc Holliday gunslinger feel to me. We get a couple cool abilities starting off at level 3. We get an ability called Creative Trajectories, and this lets us skip bullets around corners, because now when we fire, we ignore half and 3/4 cover, which is really nice. We also get a special maneuver called Ricochet, and if we miss with an attack, we can use our bonus action and a risk die, roll that risk die, and add it onto that attack roll to see if we get to hit. It's like getting to use our risk die like Bardic Inspiration for the attack. And at level 6, we get Fancy Guns Play. The first of these abilities is called Gun Spinning, and when we make a performance or a sleight of hand check using a ranged weapon while we're holding it, we can roll the risk die to add it to the roll. But the good part is here, it doesn't burn the risk die. So we basically have like super guidance on performance and sleight of hand. And then we also get the ability that's called Speed Loader. And on our turn, we can just reload a weapon without taking a bonus action. I like this a lot, especially since this is going to be the character that in my mind is going to be using the 2 revolvers for the flavor of it. They're just going to be like running, gunning, and when you run out of a gun, instead of having to holster it and pull another one, you can just reload it each turn. At level 10, we get another maneuver, and this one is really cool mechanically and thematically. It's called Deft Deflection, and we can shoot projectiles out of the air if we're within 30 feet of the creature that is being hit by a ranged attack. We can roll risk die, and then they get to use, the person that's being attacked gets to use our skin of the teeth maneuver and adding that risk die that we rolled in to their armor class. It's like basically we are getting to shield someone else, and I just love the thought that like we're shooting a bullet out of the air with a bullet to stop this from happening. It's just so neat. At level 14, we get our capstone, and it's called Pinball Shot. This is going to be one of those awesome, we got a 6-shot revolver, and we're going to fan that hammer and let each one of those fly, because the way this ability works is that when we hit a creature with a ranged attack, we can deflect that projectile and hit a different creature within 30 feet of it. It has kind of similar rules to Chromatic Orb. You can't hit the same creature more than once, but it can jump up to 5 times. And so you get the first shot and then 5 jumps, and it just is perfect for a 6-shot revolver that you're just like bam, 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 bam. And you shoot a bullet at each person. You make a new attack roll for each one that you hit and just do the damage. You can only do this ability once per turn, and you get it back on a short or long rest, but you can restore the ability by spending 2 risk die. That's free action. If you were to do it the first round, they all didn't die, you can spend 2 risk die, do it again the next time. So I don't know if this is going to be like the highest damage build of these, but I just love the aesthetic on it. This is the one I would play first and foremost. I love the like trick shot guy, the dual revolvers, getting to shoot out 6 bullets in one round. You just walk into the saloon, there's 6 baddies, and you just shoot them all. Walk behind the barkeep, find him hiding behind the thing, reach behind, grab you a bottle of that whiskey, flip him a gold, and just strut right back out those saloon doors. It just sounds really cool. This one's like the most flavorful in my mind, and I think that's one of the really great things about this class, the whole thing together, is the flavor on these. Every one of them's got like such rich lore and like iconic tropes that go along with them that whichever one you pick, it's just going to be a blast to play. And for our last subclass, it's the White Hat. And these guys are kind of like the gun paladins. At level 3, we get an ability called Lay Down the Law. With this, we can use a bonus action to give out temp HP to one ally. We'll roll a risk die and they get that much in temp. And then if they are hit before the start of our next turn, we can use our reaction and make a ranged weapon attack against their attacker. And then we also get the Steely-Eyed Aura. And this is kind of what gives me the paladin feel for this, because we get a 10-foot emanation, and us and allies in that space have advantage on saves against the frightened condition, or if we were frightened, to end the frightened condition. At level 6, we get an ability called Reach for the Sky. And now when we crit, instead of using our gut shot ability, we can force that target to make a wisdom save against our attack DC or be frightened and incapacitated for 1 minute. It ends if they take damage, or if we were to get incapacitated or killed, that would also end the effect. It gets to repeat its save at the end of each turn. It's kind of a neat form of control that we can crit someone and then lock them down, which also makes a lot of sense because, man, you just got shot so bad and now you're scared of that guy. At level 10, we get the Long Arm of the Law ability. And once per turn, when we hit a creature that is large or smaller with a ranged attack, we can hobble it, and it can't move on its next turn unless it takes the disengage action first. I mean, this is really cool. It's like a range version of a Sentinel feat. You can just lock someone down unless they happen to be like a rogue class or a monk that has some form of bonus action to disengage. They just can't move on their next turn. You're playing a ranged character, so they can't get to you. You can shoot them again. It's just got some really good synergy and a really interesting form of like control. I like this class a lot in that it's pretty tanky and has a lot of control built into it, and you don't see that a lot on range class builds. And then our level 14 capstone is the Gold Star Hero. This increases our aura up to 30 feet. And when we use our Lay Down the Law maneuver on an ally, they also get resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. That's a nice little buff to that. Half damage is amazing. And best of all, we get the Stun Surrender ability that when we use our Reach for the Sky features after a crit, instead of being incapacitated, they are now stunned. And this is way better because we can go beat them down if we choose. I like this character a lot. If the last one was Doc Holliday, this is kind of the Wired Herb. It's got a really interesting, tanky feel, even though we're ranged and we aren't really a tank. We have a lot of control and ways of locking stuff down, giving out resistance and temp HP. We get that soft taunt when we give that out also. And then the aura, all that makes me kind of have like a paladin feel and like a paragon of justice. And these are going to be like the incorruptible sheriffs of the towns. And there's also, if you're playing a couple of these gunslingers, if you put one of these at the table, there's going to be that fun, entertainable role play that happens when you have like the upholder of law and justice and then that gambling, raucous high roller, that's over there, and they're going to be bickering back and forth about all those misdemeanor crimes and tomfoolery that's going on. And that makes for really fun tables. I feel like this is maybe not the most like charismatic character to play at the table, but it's really fun to have one at your table because it is a dichotomy for everyone else to work around. Well, folks, that's all the new Gunslinger class and the 6 subclasses that go along with it. I'm super stoked to play one of these and to run a table for some of these. The flavor on them is just amazing. Each of the 6 classes is so different, and I think that's a really good testament to some good material when you get one class but really gives you out a bunch of different character feels. I think it's some really well done material. I'm very excited to run some. And if any of y'all get to run them here soon, hit me up in the comments. Let me know what y'all are thinking about the characters and interesting builds that you've seen with them and all the fun stuff that happens with roleplay that goes on when you get iconic kind of tropish characters. That always works out for some really great roleplay. So that's it for this episode of Dragons and Dice. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. If y'all could, give a like, a follow, leave a comment, and better yet, tell a friend about us if you like what the show's doing. Word of mouth is the best way to spread the good D&D news.
May those DMs treat you kindly, and may your dice do the same. Have a good one.